That was Apple Juice from Oscar Lang. He's on the show with us now. And Oscar, the last week or so, you've basically been, kicking off the release of your debut album. It's exciting times.
Yes, I'm very excited. Feels very weird to be releasing this album, especially like most of the stuff we make very far in advance. Like Apple Juice was made like months in advance. So yeah, I get to sit on it for a while and then it comes out. So I'm very excited because it builds up the anticipation.
It's so exciting to be able to speak to you so, early after you announcing this debut album. It's so, because it's our debut albums, we've spoken about it a lot on this show. They're so important things to people and artists. And all we know is that you went and recorded it over at Liverpool. Is that correct?
Yeah. We did it up in Liverpool, which is, I think it's really nice. I didn't really think that a city could influence the sound, but somehow Liverpool has. And I love it there. I really wish I could move, but I just know nobody. I only know my producer, so I'll just be like, my only mate would be my producer.
Well, so did you have all the songs that's like on your laptop on Logic, and then you went and like fully formed them out and produced them up there, or did you end up? You say that it was hard to be in a city like that and it not influence or bleed into the music that you were making. So how much Liverpool can we hear in this music of this album?
There's a few songs that like have been kicking about for a while. Things like Could Swear we've been playing, since the origin of since we started playing really. There's always been a few songs that I put into every release that we've been playing since the start. And Could Swear's literally, we played that at our first gig ever when I was still called Pig. So it's that song's been kicking about for ages, and I know I've always wanted to do it. So that came onto the album. But a lot of them, were written with Rich, who's the producer, and we also co-write a lot of the album together. So a lot of it was written up in Liverpool. And somehow it's sort of subtly influenced the way it sounds. I think it's just somewhere about, there's a few songs that I have written at home, but something about writing away from home and being in a different environment gives it a whole new song and a whole different vibe.
Are there any different directions we haven't heard from you yet on this album? Because, or is it an extension of what you've been making with the EPs and things like that?
I think what it is really is taking the sounds that I've done before and elevating them. So it was just about elevating it with the new sort of techniques and all the sort of different sound that we've got, which is much more professional, and especially spending a month in a studio compared to all the projects I'd done. My first kind of album, long EP thing, Silk, was recorded it started like an EP, and then I was just kept making more and more songs, and it formed into a sort of short album little thing. But this was fucking hunker down and record in Liverpool, just stay in the same place for a month. Luckily the studio had windows, so it wasn't just in a box the whole time. But it was good.
It was a huge change of direction really, because you started out making that quite chill bedroom pop tracks, and now, or at least more recently, you've come out with these explosive psych rock sounds. Is that something you always planned to do, or has it just been a natural kind of progression of things?
Well, it's always been a plan since the start. I mean, I didn't plan what it would sound like exactly. What I had in my mind was more of a traditional rock thing, whereas we ended up going for a more indie rock, and songs like Apple Juice that were more sort of Beck a little bit, little influences of Beck and things like that, and little bits of Oasis and that, which I didn't anticipate that. But we've been playing since the start. We would play gigs and we'd play songs like Snacks and the sort of DIY synthy bedroom ones, but we'd also play songs like Drinking Wine and Flowers. Those were ones that we had we'd been playing since the start. So there was always a plan to take it that direction. We'd always been playing that music live, but it never translated over onto the Spotify. And actually we had a whole bunch of gigs where it would describe me as soft, melancholic music because they'd heard Teenage Heart, and then you come and we played something like Drinking Wine, and it just didn't really make much sense. So we were quite excited to get those EPs out, ones that people could listen to and then come see live. And then there was a global pandemic, so that didn't happen.
Because you made that change from bedroom pop to this kind of more rock sound. Is there another sound that you kind of really want to give a go, but you just haven't had the chance yet?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I'm just more excited. One thing that's very good is that working with Dirty Hit, my label, they were extremely open to like just letting me create whatever I want. Like I've heard horror stories of A&R guys going into studios and be like, we want it to sound like this and we want it to sound like this. And they've literally never done that. They let me make the music, then I give it to them and then they roll with it. So yeah, I think it's just about experimenting and continue to like make my sound evolve a bit. Like I never really want to stay in the same place, and I'm always making different types of music. So we'll see where we go. Like you never know what we might be making in five years. But for now, I'm very much a fan of like indie rock and that sort of stuff.
I mean, you touched on about Beck and Oasis and sort of like, I call that sort of Britpop, which is what it is. I mean, we've been speaking a lot the last few weeks about bedroom pop and artists like yourself and Bieber Doobie. And like, it almost feels like Britpop, but the 2020 version. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's like this whole new genre that NME haven't just made up out of for the sake of it. It's something that is genuinely exploding. And like yourself and Bieber Doobie, who is also, of course, on Dirty Hit. And we do want to ask you about Dirty Hit in a bit. But like, you know, this idea of bedroom pop, I think, is so exciting. And I know John Henry is a massive fan of it as well.
I think what's cool about it is that it's come about from like the same sort of route. Like Britpop evolved from, you know, people listening to the Beatles and then listening to like Led Zeppelin and shit, and like just getting into that. And that's how like Oasis, they mix rock with a bit of the Beatles, and that's kind of what's happened with us, but we've had more influence and more sort of stuff, like because at the prime like core of it, we're songwriters, so we love things like the Beatles and got into music with that sort of music. But then, you know, obviously B listened way more to the sort of 90s sort of stuff, 90s sort of grunge stuff. So her music went off in that direction. I'm a big sort of fan of Beck and all that. So mine went off in that direction. But yeah, it's crazy how much like it's evolved from just bedroom stuff. I feel like it started in the bedroom and it unintentionally had the sound from that. But like, I feel like we both had like desires to make something bigger.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. And it gets exciting as the fact that you've got a debut album on the way that we really want to ask you about. So it's called Chewing the Scenery, which is a great name.
Thank you.
We've had a discussion about this. And we really want to know if I'm correct when I say this. Is it almost like a concept album, whereas in like, if you look at the track listing where it's like Final Call, it starts with 21st Century Hobby, which is like 21st Century Fox. And then there's the intermission, which is like a halfway point, and even the album artwork, which is you on a stage with an amazing guitar and like curtains and stuff. Am I reading into it too much? Or
yes, no. Well, you read into it slightly too much. 21st Century Hobby doesn't have anything to do with 20th Century Fox. But that's like, I didn't clock that. I told you.
I told you.
Yeah, it is very theatre based. That was one of the things. I always liked the idea of a concept album, and I've always had like bigger ideas to do bigger concept albums. I want to do whole stories. You know, I grew up loving like musicals and stuff and being really camp, so I'd love to do a musical one day. But yeah, it's a whole concept sort of thing to do with sort of the theatre. I really liked like the theatre and used to go all the time. Not so much now, to be fair. But yeah, the whole thing's a concept album. I love just doing little intros and little interludes and stuff. Like you can see it on all of my older stuff, but it wasn't quite fleshed out and like well-rounded and fully formed. So this one is.
They were just giving us like a taste of what to expect for this album. And I mean, I think that is so brave and so like exciting that you have the ability to want to do some kind of concept album for your debut album. Like that's a huge risk, but that just proves that, like you say, that Dirty Hit or yourself, you trust yourself, or they trust you to make what you want to make, and people will listen. And I have no doubt that people will listen. Like it's going to be.
I mean, I was thinking like I could do the debut album and call it like Oscar Lang and just have it like my debut album. But I know something about that. That's just boring to me. You know, you press play and you get your tracks and it's over. There's no like backstory or a world around it. Especially as like we're doing an acoustic version of the album, which then continues the whole concept of the theatre and moves into like the after party with the drinks and sort of that sort of thing. So yeah, I just wanted to create little stories just for a bit of fun.
That's Get Out. It comes from Oscar Lang, and if you didn't know already, he's on the show right now. Oscar, we spoke about it just before that track, about this very exclusive club that you are in, which is Dirty Hit. I think I just want to ask, how did that come about? Because it's a very exclusive club of very talented teenagers.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that people always ask me is like, I always get messages like, oh, how can I like get signed to like Dirty Hit and that. I get that all the time, but the only thing I can really say is like, stop asking how do I get signed to Dirty Hit, because that's like, they never look for those sort of people. It came about because I was working with B, doing Beaver Doobie, and we did the first, so obviously we done Coffee together and all that, like the old stuff that was all recorded in my bedroom. And then I did her first EP, Patched Up. I was sort of like half B's manager at the time, like helping her out with meetings and stuff, because she just didn't know what was going on. And I'd sort of been into the music industry for all my life. I've always been sort of studied the different aspects of it. So I thought I'd come along to these meetings. So I met the whole Dirty Hit team. And then we did the EP and they just liked my stuff. And then I heard from B one day, like, yo, they're thinking of signing you. And I couldn't really believe it. And here I am, I'm signed today. I couldn't be happier, to be honest. It's so creatively freeing. Like, we spoke to major labels and the concept of that was just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's what I love about it is it just sticks to the root of indie music, and it lets artists, although it helps them financially, I suppose, it feels like the only authentic indie label that there really is. I mean, I can't name
what I like about it
a big label that is like competing on big like levels.
Exactly, it's like an indie major label, which is kind of cool, because as much as I liked indie labels, there is an aspect of like it's very small and like it doesn't quite have the reputation that Dirty Hit has. So it's like halfway between a major and an indie label, and that's why I love it. It's also like there's like 10 people that run the whole label. So I know all of Dirty Hit, which is like, you wouldn't be able to say that about any other label. You wouldn't be able to be like, I know everyone there. But I do, yeah.
So you've said it's like a concept album type thing. How long has that been the idea? Have you always, like, since music's been a part of your life and you've been daydreaming of making music, has that been like the goal to make this type of debut album, or has it kind of come about recently?
I mean, it changes all the time. Like, since the start, I know I've always wanted to like make concept albums. A lot of my stuff have had intros, like the EP I did, Bops, etc., had a big intro, and that actually kind of stemmed from the idea I had where I wanted to make like a full album to kind of like animation in the way, like, have you ever watched the old BFG? Like the really vintage one, like that sort of style, and make an album to it. So that's how I started with the intro on that album, and it became sort of this like fantastical sort of thing, but it never really went any further than that. And I left it in because everyone was like, that's hilarious, you got to leave it in. But I wanted to take the concept further. So I've always wanted to do a concept album, but this one just came about, you know, we wrote a lot of the songs, wasn't thinking about like what the concept was going to be, but then it just came together, and I just really like the idea of having an intermission, and especially like in order, like if you had the physical vinyl and you have to switch it, but there's like a little intermission like before it comes on. So it kind of feels like, oh, it's a whole new side. And, you know, the album's structured in a way where it will feel different on the second half. Like it goes into, because it's so many different styles, but everything elevated. The first half's very energetic, and then it switches into the next half and it sort of takes a whole new direction, which was cool.
So we spoke about the album Chew the Scenery, and I want to ask you about the cover art of all your stuff, because I mean, it's quite beautiful. Where did you do that, or have you got like, is this a mate, or is it someone?
No, so I found this artist. I don't know how. I'm just like, that's all I do on Instagram pretty much nowadays. I just like follow various artists because I just get carried away on like, you know, when you can like see who they follow and then just go like down little wormholes. So I found this guy called Giovanni Foligno who did like really amazing art. And I never really considered like actually being like, hey, do you want to do some art? Like I was going to buy a phone case off it and just like be like, oh, this guy's cool. But it came to doing the album artwork for Overthunk, which was like the EP I put out just at the start of lockdown. And I wanted him to do it, but the label were like, I'm not sure it's the right vibe. So we got like a photo sort of vintage vibe for that one. But I always had it in the back of my mind that I really wanted to like work with this guy. And so he did the Hand Over Your Head cover, and I was like so happy with it. So he's worked with us for the last, you know, few releases. He did Antidotes Being Bored. And yeah, he's done Chew the Scenery, and he just smashes it every time. Like we get the design back and we're like, this is so cool. Like he has such interesting perspectives in the way he draws things. That's kind of almost psychedelic. So I really liked it.
Yeah, he really puts his sort of spin on it and his style, which I really like.
It's very unique. And I mean, that was one of the things that I said to him when we first started like talking about it. I was like, I just want you to have as much creative, like go for it, like do what you want, because like I just trust him and know that he's going to smash it.
Yeah. And going forward over the next few months and lead up and shortly after the album release, do you know what's happening with like live stuff, or is that not planned yet? Can you not say?
Not allowed to say.
Well, I can say, but like I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, we've got a few festivals booked for September, but like I will tell you that everyone in the music industry is like, we'll see what happens there. I'm really hoping that it happens because I'm dying to play a show. I was actually just yesterday typing up a set list, and couldn't believe that really, like before we went into lockdown, my last EP was Bops Etc. and it was so sort of DIY and bedroomy. And now it's like we've got released so much of this rock music. So like I was writing out the set list and it was completely different, like not a single song from the previous set list. So it's going to be crazy to be able to come back and play these bangers that are just going to go off live so much more than what.
Well, can I ask what your first song back and your first performance may be?
Yes, we will open with Antidote to Being Bored because it's just so like the riff just comes in. There's a really cool intro on the album that we want to come on to. You'll hear it when it comes out, but it just like fucking blows your ears off.
Yeah.
So we're going to come out to that and then go into Antidote to Being Bored. But we want to do Mr. Brightside, but like we don't know if we can. Like if we play Mr. Brightside, then I don't know if we can top anything after that. Like the energy is just gonna play Mr. Brightside at like the first gig back would just fucking go off. Like,
do you know what? I think
you can just play that and leave, and then you
exactly. Like you can't really top Brightside. It's either got to be last or it's not happening at all.
I feel like I mean, I saw Sam Fender a year or so ago, and he finished. I thought he was going to finish with like Hypersonic Missiles or something, one of his like big tracks, and he finished with Bruce Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark, and I was like, oh right, so like to be fair, you can't top the boss. Do you know what I mean? Like, similar situation. But I think if you're going to do Glastonbury, or you're going to do like, of course you're not going to do Glastonbury this year, unfortunately, but if you're going to do like Reading or somewhere, Mr. Brightside I think is a solid choice. I
feel like it's like if I play it first, it might, because I'm worried that people are gonna be a little bit tentative and stuff. But like you come out with fucking in with that, and it's just going off. Nobody cares about Corona anymore.
I agree. I think that is such a unique idea, and I'm sure people will be so ready and up for that so much. It's gonna be wicked.
I'm gagging for it.
All right, so Chew the Scenery comes out the 16th of July this year. We are so excited to hear it. Oscar, thank you so much for joining us on the Soundcheck.
Thank you for having me.
Please come back and see us, and we cannot wait to perhaps dance on at a festival with you to Mr. Brightside.
Oh, I can't wait.